really I had to start looking at it as this is an investment, this is a business, and therefore I need to have professional management, oversight, and selection, and I get that with DORE.
You're listening to the DORE Podcast, where we spotlight the people, ideas, and businesses keeping Ottawa running. From contractors to real estate investors, entrepreneurs to industry experts, we dive into real conversations and help grow everybody's pie.
Episode 30. Dean's Insight with DORE Property Management.
Okay, so today we're in for a bit of a treat.
Thank you.
Yeah. So Dean, and I mean, just for the audience, full disclosure, you're a client of ours.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So obviously we just want to be forthcoming with the audience. We were humbled to hear that you wanted to come on and share your story. So finally we were able to connect.
Yes.
So thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So Dean, our understanding is that you had a house that you rented on your own, and then had certain challenges, and then things transpired. So
yeah,
tell us about your rental real estate journey.
I owned this home since 2005, and when I got married, I moved in with my husband, and so this house was going to become a rental. And I thought, I know people. I've worked in the nonprofit sector all of my life. I've worked with families all of my life. So I thought, I can do this. This is not a problem. I'll select the right people. I had actually worked in the housing field early on in my career, so I knew what the legislation said. And so I thought, I can do this. I went through about 3 tenants, and it was an experience where I learned that I can't do this, that there is a science to selecting the right clients and the right tenants.
Yeah.
And I led with my emotions, which often doesn't give you the best results. When I met and was introduced to DORE, I realized I needed to find out what that could offer me.
Right.
And I started working with DORE, and I've had nothing but success ever since. So the experiences that I had on my own were harsh, to be polite. The experiences that I have had with DORE have been all successful.
Oh, okay. Well, that's good. So we can stop the podcast there. But I find it. So you said you had been in the field in the past. In what capacity?
So I actually, early in my career, I worked for the Ministry of Housing. So like putting together tenant associations, understanding the Landlord and Tenant Act, all of those things I had done. I was an advocate for tenants. Right, so teaching them what their rights were, educating landlords as well. So early on in my career, I did work in the nonprofit field, which is similar but not the same. And so I felt, well, I know the laws and I know people, but it's kind of like you don't want to be your own lawyer. You need somebody else with the objectivity, right, where the emotions are not as attached to it. It is a business. It is a business transaction. And really, I had to start looking at it as this is an investment, this is a business, and therefore I need to have professional management, oversight, and selection, and I get that with DORE.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I mean, obviously one of the biggest reasons why we exist is exactly for those reasons, but primarily because dealing directly with the tenant when you're the landlord, most people will let their emotions take over. And the legislation is not necessarily forgiving if you allow them to do certain things, and then all of a sudden, then you're bound by the law and you're into the wave, right? So essentially, when you decided to put the house on the market at first, like what was that process for you attracting that first tenant? Was it a sign? Like what was that process?
So actually, it's funny you say that, because I used Kijiji, which was the worst possible avenue. I mean, you have to be really good at screening out inappropriate contacts. And really, to be honest, I'm a pet owner. At the time, I had 2 pugs. I loved pugs. I worked with a pug rescue organization, and so I chose a tenant because she had a pug, right? And it's like, okay, she's got a pug. She's got to be a nice person. What? Like, it was it was an experience where I actually had to engage a lawyer who gave me, because she hadn't paid rent, for instance, and the lawyer gave me the advice of kiss the rent goodbye, offer her $500 to move out. So I actually paid this tenant to leave. And so there were a lot of losses in there, and then there's a lot of sort of damage repair afterward. And I thought I had been careful, and I wasn't. So having been burnt really a good 2 times, I knew that this was not something that I was good at. I think self-awareness is something I have. So it's like, okay,
no,
I'm
that's
not
fair.
good at this. I need someone who is good at this to do the rest.
And so that when you say you had some challenges there, so how long did that tenancy last?
That was probably about a year and a half before. I mean, it started tanking early. There were signs, but then it really hit some snags from there, sort of thing.
And was it rent related, or was it other?
Yeah, they had not paid rent. They chose to buy a motorcycle instead of paying rent. There were other things they wanted to spend money on, and in fact, this particular person turned out to be a hoarder as well. So they started. My unit is pristine. It's beautiful. I love it. It's well cared for, but there was no sign. The person had a good reference, but I mean, it could have been anybody on the phone, right? Probably was. And then at the end of it all, when I finally got the person out, she actually called me and said, "Could I use you as a reference?" And I'm like, no, this was not a good experience for anybody, and I can't, in good conscience, pass you on to somebody else. Like, no.
You hit on some very, very crucial things that we've learned over the years, whereas most, not all, because obviously, by what you just said, most landlords that would have an issue with a tenant would receive a request for good review, would give a good review to get rid of them, right? So it's sad, but at the same time, that's reality. That's what we run into. And so, like you just, perhaps, and we just don't know. We have certain parameters we use behind the scenes to try to limit ourselves from being exposed from people who would provide, either having a reference that has no relevance whatsoever to that tenancy, or essentially trying to get a sense of what, some very key questions that we ask and then we document. Because obviously it would be ill-advised for anybody giving us wrong information, because we're in the business of doing just that. And when it came to rent not being paid, did that just so, because this happens in multiple things. Sometimes, I'll pay you half, or I'll pay, I'm a couple of days late, or, I pay my check bounces. Like, what was that? How did that start? How did that experience start with you?
Well, it starts with having to have that, like, you have to prepare yourself for the conversation, right? You already know in advance this is not going to go well, because I was like, okay, you haven't paid rent, or you're late with rent. And so I have to contact them. Now, I work full time. I had a full career. I'm a busy person. And so it became like more of a part-time job than I wanted it to be, because it required more of my time. Conflict resolution is something that I think I'm pretty good at, but it's a little different. Like at work, that's no problem. That's sort of like office dean. I'm good at that. I'm in my role. I know what my parameters are. When it's my home, when it's a home that I own, that I'm emotionally attached to, that used to be where I lived,
right? Used to a house.
And it's like, I feel like I have to control my own emotions and say, okay, now you need to pay your rent. You also need to look after the home. Here's the lease that you signed. You're not fulfilling that. What are you going to do about it?
Right.
And whatever they promised to do or whatever they wouldn't do, it wouldn't follow through. So then you're waiting in anticipation, okay, if they're going to pay part of the rent, or that they're going to be late by 1 week, that week comes by and goes by and there's no money. So you've got to do the follow-up. So there's this stress of not knowing, whether they're going to follow through, and then what you're going to do after that.
Correct.
When I think we were up to about 2 months where it was in arrears, and I had contacted a lawyer and said, okay, what are my options? And the lawyer said, listen, once you've there are people who do this professionally, this can end up being much worse for you. And the lawyer gave me advice. He said, what I suggest is you actually offer to pay their move, pay $500 and forgive the rent to get them out, then make the repairs and consider it a lesson learned. So I did exactly that. I followed the lawyer's advice. I did say the rent is forgivable, and here's an additional $500 if you just leave. Right?
Isn't that sad?
Well, and they're like, well, we might. Oh, okay, maybe we will. So you feel powerless because there's an expectation. I am the landlord who is responsible, in that I want them to look after this home the way that I looked after. So I did things like I'd leave them a whippersnipper, a lawnmower, the snow shovel. I provided, because I wanted to make sure that they would use really good furnace filters. So things you don't think about. It's like, so I would, once a year, I'd drop off a year's worth of furnace filters to making sure that they look after the place. And they don't, right? And then things like I would end up, well, not the ones I chose. Sorry, let me make that clear. The ones I chose didn't, right? And things like, I'd look at them and like, honestly, my yard was pristine when I left, and I'd go to visit, and I had one tenant, this problematic tenant, who, when she got out of the car, didn't want to go around to the other side and walk up the driveway. So what she did is she walked up the lawn through the garden and created a path all the way up the grass and through the garden, because that was a shorter route for her than taking the paved portion. So I knew that I had to own that this is the person I selected. The process
but still not fun.
This is the process I used gave me this result. And I had to accept that, because I thought the first time, okay, well, maybe I just made one mistake. I'll re-rent it and I'll find the right person. No, I made a second mistake, and I realized, okay, I am not good at this, because emotionally I would be like, oh, listen to their story. Oh, I believe them. It's like, so no, I couldn't do a credit as a private citizen. I didn't know how to do a credit check, and I could do the references, but they can, like, as it turned out, they had someone who was a co-locator. What is that? I can't find my English word. Like a roommate. A roommate posed as their landlord, and to give me the reference. And the only reason I knew this is because when they were trying to move out, they called my work colleague, who also had a place for rent, and he calls me and he says, this person's name, is that not your tenant? And I'm like, yeah. And I said, who's giving them the reference, right? And it was their roommate.
I know.
So it's when people make a science of this, you need to have a science to prevent them from getting through and being successful.
Or at least limit it.
Limit.
Because you can't eliminate. I mean, we're in the business. We rent hundreds of units every year. I mean, there's no guarantees, obviously. We have our tools, some of which I won't share here because they're our tools, to try to limit that, because obviously those situations arise, and once you're in that process, it's not fun. So.
At DORE, we're more than just leasing agents, we're rental matchmakers. Our team is dedicated to matching the right tenants with the perfect home. With personalized service and a deep understanding of the rental market, we're here to help you find a place that you'll love. Inquire today and rent from people who care.
Is it fair to assume that when this tenant wasn't paying rent, that like there was no notice provided or of like the compliance of no? Yeah, and this is the issue as well, because people who have done what you've done, a lot of people have done, and sometimes it works because most people are good. That's reality. And then sometimes maybe your tenant was good, but she ran into an issue, and this was her way to, or his way, I'm not sure, to wiggle out of the responsibility, right? So, but one of the things, you remind me of a client that had a situation similar to yours many years ago, significantly late on rent. Not a couple of months, but we're talking the better part of a year. And he had the assumption that there really is nothing you could do about it. But and I mean, anybody who's not a landlord listening to this, in the province of Ontario as we speak, if somebody is late one day, we can commence the eviction process.
Right.
Okay. And commencing the eviction process doesn't mean that you'll kick them out right away. And all truth be told, I never got in this business to put people on the street. This is the last resort for us. We don't want to do that. We want to prolong tenancies and make sure everybody wins. But there's a contract. It's occupancy for rent. But our protocol here is that when the rent is not paid, we initiate the eviction notice right away. And some find that somewhat aggressive. But the reality is the eviction process, and so somebody calls in and tells us, we're going to be late on the rent, and they don't, they'll be right. We'll say, okay, well, thank you for letting us know, because at least if they communicate with us, it's a good sign. That means generally that they're trying to do the right thing, which we appreciate. But we also tell them that they'll receive the eviction notice regardless, but it has 20-day time frame, and if you pay before it gets terminated. It automatically gets nullified. So, but you're on notice.
Right.
If you haven't paid your rent, we give you the notice. You said you'll pay this week. Great. If you do, everything's good. But if you don't, we've already started the process. Right. And then trying to move the process along. And again, last resort. I mean, you as a landlord, I'm a landlord like you. The last thing we want is to do that. I don't want to do that as a management company. We don't want to do that. But sometimes you have no choice because people will take advantage, and then next thing you know, if we're being too nice, then all of a sudden, then you're just ended up paying for them to live there for 6 months or whichever, and then it's never fun, right? So all of that. So I understand that very well, and so you had the first tenancy. Did you have to pay her the $500?
I did pay her the $500 to move.
And then she moved fairly quickly?
Out. Yeah.
Okay.
She moved out.
And had you been able to get the last month's rent paid at the beginning? Or?
So we'd already, yes.
Okay.
But they'd already chewed through
that.
They
had used it. Oh, you had already applied it.
That's already been chewed through.
Right.
So, it was, but yeah.
I listen to you and I feel the pain because I understand exactly what that is. Yeah.
Like I have friends, and some of my friends, like they think I'm making it up, and it's like, no, because like the tenant after that one, like, where I thought one mistake was just accidental, the next one will be better.
Yeah.
And I had tenants that, because there were, and we had a signed lease, right? So there was an orientation, the whole thing, we had a signed lease, but they had decided that they would rent one of the rooms. Right. In the townhouse to somebody else for money, because my townhouse is in an area where it's close to a college and other places where people would want temporary housing. And they chose somebody who apparently had just gotten out of jail, and they were now afraid of him, and he has the keys to their place, and they want me to change the locks to them. So I know nothing about anything until they call me and say, okay, we have rented a room to someone who's just gotten out of jail. We're actually afraid for our safety, and I have the kind of lock that you can't just go and change the key. I have the master, and I have to make the arrangement. And so I've got to talk to them and like,
why is this my problem?
Yeah, right. Because it's like, then there's this sort of moral dilemma of like you did this. Why is this? Why am I mopping up? And it's like, it's my home. If I don't mop this up, then it's going to end up with me anyway. So there's, and they kind of know the game sort of thing. So after, and if I'm really being honest and taking that farther, what I later learned was that person, whatever their issues were, they didn't understand, and I have no polite way of putting this, they didn't understand that it isn't good enough to, like, this person didn't think he had to pee in a toilet. He thought as long as he peed in the bathroom, it was good enough. Wow. So when I got all of these people out, I could not believe like the bathroom, because it's like it wasn't somebody had an accident, someone just peed in the bathroom and didn't use the toilet on a repeated basis and thought that was okay.
Yeah.
So it was that moment that I absolutely knew, okay, I can't do this because it's not that it's just financially not viable because it's costing me a lot to repair all of this. But emotionally it hurt me that somebody would treat my home that way, right?
It's insulting.
It's like really? You don't know how to use a wall. Like I'm not here to teach people life skills. It's not a rehabilitation environment.
No, of course not.
It is a place that you hope you rent to somebody who will respect it and follow the legislation, what they're required to in order to rent a home in Ontario.
Right.
But I learned very quickly that not everybody is like me, and not everybody has life skills, and not everybody follows legislation. So.
Right. No, and I mean, and what you're describing there, with somebody not respecting that part. I've owned rental properties for 25 years. It's unusual to hear that. I've heard it. I've seen it. I've seen worse. I've seen stuff where you kind of wonder, does this really have to be put in the lease? Like, does this, things that you would just, I'll always remember many years ago, we were doing an inspection of a multiplex, and we're in the basement, and I kept telling the landlord, I said, there's something wrong. Like the floor is bows, it's crazy. And so anyways, he brings in whoever had done the inspection of the property, and the guy's measuring, and he's like, well, really, there should be a support post here to hold this floor joist. And the tenant's there, and he's like, well, no, I said, don't put a post there. And we're like, why? Well, there was one there before, but it's in the middle of, when I put my sofa, I watch a TV, it's in the middle of my view. So it removed the support post. Isn't that crazy?
Yes.
And you're like,
and dangerous.
And but this is the type of stuff you're like, really? Does this have to be pointed to you?
Right.
So thankfully, we don't run into too many of those, but we've seen our fair share of issues. So it wouldn't be surprising to.
And so the first part of my story doesn't have a lot of pleasant endings to it, but my second part does, right? And the way that I measure this is there is a pause right now where I had a great tenant. They gave their notice. In fact, they were a military family. I've worked with military families most of my life. So knowing that a military family was in there was just an awesome feeling for me. I understood that they get posted and they move on. So there was no problems there at all. There were. And
this was before you.
So this was the latest tenancy. Like right now, the place is vacant. Today it's
that's the tenant. Okay, this is the one that when you allowed us to help you.
Yes.
out.
After the second half of my story is once I got DORE. DORE had I had nothing but great tenants, and the most recent one. When they moved out, I spoke to my neighbors because I could now go into the place and take a look around, and it was empty, and I was going to leave it vacant for a little while just to do the renovations that I wanted to do. And when I met the neighbors, they said, the people that you've had, the last 3 couples that have lived here have been wonderful because they've been there for a long time. It's a neighborhood. Even though that I haven't lived in that home since 2011, I maintain good friendships with, so it's the kind of neighborhood that when you make those friendships, they're for life, right? So there's a lot of people in that neighborhood who I'm still in contact with. I don't even live in Ottawa anymore. I live in another community, and I'm still friends with them. So when I show up, because the townhouse is empty and we're DORE is looking for the new tenants, and I talk to the neighbors, they're like, they tell me the last 3 couples have been great, all selected through DORE. And so when you talk to your neighbors and they'll
tell you.
Yes,
they'll tell you.
They share a wall. It's it's an in-unit townhouse, so one wall is shared. And they have said the last 3 tenants have been wonderful.
Nice.
All chosen by DORE, so I had no problems. I also I had the experience of going through COVID with DORE, and that was an interesting experience because things were changing quickly, and I wasn't, although I was trying to stay up with what how are laws being impacted by COVID, because COVID was something that was new to everybody. But DORE knew exactly what was happening, and I would call in and I would say, okay, or there was this, because of COVID, there were 2 times where the tenants were asking for a deal to pay it a little bit later and a date and a commitment. And everything went off beautifully.
Right.
There was never any problem. It had a successful outcome. But I do think it was because DORE was up on the environment as it changed. I felt confident that I didn't have to do all that work, that I knew that DORE was, and I would say, is this what they can do? Yes, it is. Here's how you do it. And everything worked out well.
Investing in Ottawa real estate? DORE Property Management has 20 plus years of proven results. Call 613-227-0000 or visit dorerentals.com.
And I appreciate you giving us credit, which is great, but on the opposite token, for us, we need a good landlord relationship, right?
Correct.
So in order for us to perform our duties and make recommendations, as you saw when you walked in, everybody likes Dean, right?
Right.
Because we need, obviously we don't own the property in most cases. Some we do, but in this case, we don't own the property. So we're making recommendations.
Right.
But the landlord has to allow us to make certain things. So COVID was clearly a challenge for everybody. And so many things have transpired from it, but actually made us better in many cases. On how inspections are done and being able to be, flexible on how the access is given and so on. And there's certain things we put in place that to this day are still functional. So, and then obviously if somebody, was having an issue during that time when it comes to rent, but they were being forthcoming with us, then for us, that's number one, okay, how do we work together? So the first thing we would always tell landlords is, let's figure out a way, because if the objective is there are a couple of things were happening simultaneously. First off, some people were genuinely being financially restrained.
Right.
So let's try to figure out a way to prolong this so it makes sense. But they have to be a willing participant.
Yes.
The owner has to want to do this. The tenant has to want to do this, but the board, the landlord-tenant board, was shut down.
Yes.
So if we're not resolving issues, nobody's going to resolve it until who knows when. So we were trying to encourage everybody. And if anybody, like I had one in one of my units where within a 48-hour window, both the husband and the wife lost their jobs.
Right.
So that's extremely stressful for them. And they're calling to say, listen, if it's okay, we're just going to leave at the end of the month. We know we're in a lease, but we don't know how we're going to make the next payment. And we don't want to go through this and put you through that. So how do we, and we said, listen, if that's what you want to do, then but we're ready to work with you. And they're like, listen, we have a place we can go temporarily. We don't want to put you through this, nor do we want the stress of knowing that we're living somewhere we're not paying.
Yeah.
And then, so we just agreed to, do a mutual termination and go our own ways. But you need the landlord to play a role, obviously, right? And obviously in your case, if you look at the 2 circumstances you had at the beginning, you had that willingness to do the right thing, and unfortunately, it didn't work. But it could have very well worked. You could have had people who it would have been great, and so on. But unfortunately, some of those issues happen. So
you bring up a point that really flags for me, because I feel like I've had the full meal deal. I've had to deal with the leasing staff because I've had my unit turnover a couple of times. It's a kind of unit where people stay for about 2 years, 2 to 3 years, and then it's like I've had tenants that they were there and they lived there for a couple of years and then bought their first home. So I expect that it's never going to be, or it's not unusual that it'd be 2 to 3 years at a time.
Yeah.
And so I've dealt with the leasing staff. I've had to deal with the service staff. So when the water faucet in the outside garden was not working, and does it need to be repaired? So I work great with the leasing staff. I work great with when repairs need to be done. I've actually met some of the contractors just because I happened to be there when a contractor came in to do the work, and they were fantastic, right? I deal with the finance staff, so I need to be able to get my financial statements each month, but also if my accountant at the end of the year during tax season has questions or whatever, I'm able, if I am missing one receipt, and it seems to me that I'm always missing 1 month, right? I just call and I have it emailed to me immediately, right? So there's that confidence level that what I need, I can access. And everybody that I've spoken to has been great to deal with, right? So, and it's always timely. Yeah. So I appreciate that. So you're right. It does take, like,
it takes two to tango.
Yes, it is a relationship business. Right. It's not just with the tenants, but with the landlord and the property manager as well.
Yeah, because even for us, I mean, for our customer success reps that work, in many cases, what ends up happening is we could be facing the same situation on two different houses, have the same solution, and it's acceptable to one owner, it's not acceptable to the other. So there's always, so that's why I say, it's nice that that we've had a good relationship, but I also have to put it on the fact that you've played your role to make it easier to move things along, because obviously that's not always the case for us when it comes to that. So I'll put you on the spot. Okay. What would you recommend? Any recommendations for us? Communication, certain things. I'm a type of guy. I always like to learn, and I always want to see if there's anything we could have done differently or better or quicker or sooner or maybe differently or.
I suppose, like, I don't feel like there's a void. I don't feel like there's something that's missing. The one thing that as a landlord myself, the one thing that I might have appreciated, and it's sort of like icing that's on the cake, it's not the cake, and that is when the place is vacant and we're about to go into searching for a new tenant or whatever, is to be able to meet staff member from DORE, like the leasing staff. On site. And the only reason why I say that is because most recently the townhouse that I have was vacant, and I live outside of Ottawa now. So I was driving into the city, and there were some things I hadn't spent any time with it, and I wanted to spend some time with it. Right. And so I didn't check with DORE to say, listen, I'm going into the townhouse. I just went into the townhouse, and I missed the garden. I was pulling some weeds in the garden. I was cutting the grass when somebody started and my car was parked in the driveway. When somebody walked up, and a very professional woman, and she looked at me as if to say, what are you doing here?
Who are you?
I own the place. I'm a realtor and I'm showing your unit today. And I said, oh, sorry, I'm the landlord. I said, I didn't tell anybody I was going to be here today. And I asked her, I said, have you been in the townhouse before? And she said, well, no, I'm showing it today for the first time, and the couple hasn't arrived. And I said, come with me. And I took her through.
But was it a DORE representative, or was it a third party?
She was a realtor that is showing. So she's working with. So she had clients that she had contacted DORE. She had made arrangements with DORE that she was going to show her clients. And in fact, these are the people who ended up renting. Renting the townhouse. But I was able to walk with her because I said, have you ever been in there? And when I go through it, naturally, it's like I tell the stories about why I like this place so much. So if anybody's going to be a great salesman for my unit, it's me. So I went through with her and I pointed out all the things, like we just changed that light fixture, we did the flooring here, all of these things, and why I like the two, the double closets in the second bedroom. And it's a design, because it's an urban townhouse, so it's like 3 stories but 4 levels, because the entry level is split. But when I said to her, when I lived here, the top floor is a main bathroom, the master bedroom, and the spare bedroom. But I said, for me, when I lived here alone, that was the master unit, because I just used the second bedroom as my office. The bathroom was mine. The powder room downstairs is for guests, so like the top floor. And so just features that you wouldn't think of unless you actually lived there, I was able to explain to her, right? And then on the entry level, I have a den with I always called it my man cave because it was like a den that had a powder room off it, but then you've got sliding glass doors to the deck. So I said, I could be here at nighttime after work. I've got a barbecue going on the deck. I'm watching TV here, and there's the bathroom there. I got everything I need after work, right? So
Exactly.
those kinds of experiences that you only know about because you live there. So I feel like she was able to explain those things to her clients because they ended up they took the place.
That's good.
Right?
That's good. It certainly didn't. It certainly helped.
Yeah. Well, and
sometimes it's just imagining, right? When the house is vague, there's nothing in the house. Sometimes it's a bit harder to imagine what it looks like. So you just painted a good picture.
At DORE, we go beyond basic property management. We pair tenants with homes that fit their lives and landlords with tenants they can trust. Inquire today and rent from people who care.
I hope so. I hope that's what I did. And it's funny because when I went back out, I told her, I said, I'm just going to mind my own business here in the garden. Tell them I'm the gardener or something. Because she was waiting for her clients to show up. And then afterwards, she asked them if they wanted to meet me. And I met them. And I said, I am the landlord. I said, I love this place. I'm looking after the garden. And I said, I loved living here. If you choose this place, you'll love living here too.
And you can just, if you put yourself in the tenant's shoes, to know they'd be moving into a house where the landlord treats the house this way, it goes a long way.
Yes.
Right? Because oftentimes what ends up happening is sometimes you have a landlord that doesn't care, and all of a sudden you're bringing people in and we're telling them we really want them to care for the house, but then they're like, but the landlord doesn't. Right? Because they don't treat it the right way, they won't clean it up, they won't do, some very basic things. So obviously there's no doubt that for somebody moving in, understanding that you as the owner of this property cares for it this much, then there's an expectation to treat it properly. So
and what I like is that your people get that.
Yeah.
Like they get that they get me and they get where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And so when we have to negotiate something, if they're saying, listen, the tenants want this fixed or this changed, they already know that I care about this, right? And that I'm a good listener. So I'll listen to it. I'm like, yeah, okay, that makes sense. Let's do it. I'll say, do it, right? And they send me an email, do you approve? And I'm like, yes, I approve. And then it's done and it's over with.
Right.
I don't have to sweat it out after that. I make the decision, I pay for it, but I make the decision and I don't have to worry about it. And that's that's the service I'm buying. That's the service I want. Those things that I'm doing, that's all comes off of at tax time, it comes off my revenue and the taxes that I pay. So I know that that's a good thing. When I finally realized, like when I went Rose for the first time, and I thought to myself, because I started asking Rose, okay, tell me how your business works, because I had never worked with a property management company before. And when I realized, okay, I've got all these headaches, and I don't have the time for this, and I'm not good at it, clearly. But if I give it to you, that's tax deductible, and I don't have the headaches. I'm like, wow, that's a no-brainer. Why haven't I been doing this before now? Yeah. Which is, once I figured out what the benefit was and my time is freed up because I'm not worried, and I have a career. So I was working I'm retired now, but at the time I was busy with my career. I didn't have as much time to deal with this sort of thing, and I'm like, but it was my retirement plan to keep this. Plus I was emotionally attached to the place. I didn't want to just sell it. I had to learn to treat it as a business because I loved the place, I loved the neighborhood. And so I went in the middle. It is a business, and I still care about it.
Of course, but that's the best, actually. Yeah, because if you don't care, that's even worse. Yeah. Because then it's tough, right? But it's interesting to hear you say that, because a lot of times the people who appreciate the service the most are the ones who've done it before. So they understand what it is to deal, which you're hoping not to get many issues, but that's the reality. But when it comes to, and one of the things we also, and we preach to the team all the time, is, we talk about tenants and landlords and properties and this and that, but at the end of the day, the properties is a side thing. We're dealing with people. Yeah. So tenant, landlord, we're all people. Yeah. We're all looking to be treated respectfully. We're all looking to be, to have something, a fair deal and so on. it's just normal. And then one of the things we preach the most is the fact that when you have a move-in, like you were saying, one of the move-ins actually happening today, is the fact that you have to respect the fact that for the tenant, and in some cases the landlord, the move-in is a stressful time because there's a changeover. So the tenant typically is coming in, they're moving their stuff in, they maybe, they set up utilities, they're where to put that in the house and dealing with movers, and sometimes, it's physical work that perhaps sometimes they don't typically do. So we always say if you have to aim to get the move-in experience to be positive, because once people are settled in, then usually it gets much smoother. But if you don't nail down the move-in, then it typically trickles, it just keeps going, right? So if the grass hasn't cut the grass. If the place hasn't been cleaned or the cleaner missed a room, whatever, just get it done. With a little touch up here, get it done. Oh, I tried the stove, it wasn't working, get it fixed. Like, just make sure they're happy.
Yes.
Because if they're happy, then first of all, they'll feel respected. They'll say, oh, okay, if I have an issue, I know they'll resolve it. And the landlord cares enough to make sure that I'm comfortable. Then it just makes everything a lot smoother.
Yeah.
So that, to me, in my world, like I said, I've owned rental properties for 25 years. I can tell you one thing: if you start off a tenancy on a bad note, irrelevant to people being good or bad, it's never good.
No.
It's just never good.
Oh.
Even if somebody's good, they may not say much, but they won't be happy. So that's why, we have a full system that does follow through. So anybody, you'll see, you do move in, you'll receive a message in the next few days that says, hey, but the purpose of that is to try to get a sense. So we're not calling you and say, oh yeah, whatever, but just hey, everything good? Yes or no? And if not, tell us about it so we can learn. Because sometimes we forget, or we've made a mistake, or I had one that come in the past weekend where there was an issue, as a relatively minor issue, but it's okay, maybe we could have done that a bit differently, right? So, but it gives the opportunity to people to give us feedback. And, as of this day, any review that comes in, positive or negative, I personally address.
Perfect.
I'm the one that goes on and answers it. Sometimes I'm not sure what happened, so I'll check with the team. Hey, what is this all about? And so, this had that. Oh, okay. Did we mess up? Yeah, okay. I acknowledge we messed up. Okay. Or this, yes, but X, Y, Z, this is the reason, but thank you for telling us, or thank you for sharing your comments, then we'll try to get better at addressing that issue. So, but it helps to have a landlord that wants to provide that type of service, so then we can muscle it through, right? So it's so that's good. So Dean, are you looking to stay a landlord for a long time?
I've expanded. In fact, I purchased. I live in Brockville now.
Yeah.
Last year I bought a condo there, an investment condo on the waterfront.
Good for you.
And the first thing I did is I called Rose and do you do Brockville? And she said, sorry, no, right? So
too far
in this situation, whether good or bad, it was somebody that I know who rented it, and I know them quite well.
Good.
But it's no different. It's funny because I've moved to a different community, and a smaller community, and I thought, well, that's got to be easier, right? Because everybody knows everybody. No. I've heard the horror stories, sort of thing. So it's still the same, right? You care about a property, you invest obviously time and money into it, but then you invest part of yourself in it, which is what I've done even in the second property. And then you have to share it.
Of course.
And you have to share it as a business and a business practice. So the one that I have here in Ottawa, I've had that it's been a rental since 2011. I don't see that changing. Like I said, we took a pause right now. It just worked out that the family, the military family that was in there was posted, they moved. And so it was a good time for me, because now I'm retired, to take a look at it and see, okay, it's been on the rental market for a good 14 years now. What do I need? What does it, although I've been fixing it up all the way along, it's never sat there for a couple of months. And we let it sit a couple of months so that I could do things like the flooring, the kitchen, right? Those things that need to be done periodically.
Right.
I put in a new furnace, new central air. I did the full meal deal so that it would be ready for the next family to come in and use it. So I plan to be it's part of my retirement plan, so I plan to keep that. And plus, I'm emotionally attached to that one in particular because it was my home.
That's fair.
And I like the neighborhood. When I haven't lived there since 2011, 14 years. I pulled in with my car, a different car. I'm now white hair, white beard. I used to have brown hair, brown beard. And people who lived there when I did walked up and said, "Are you Dean? Oh my gosh, I haven't seen you since whenever," right?
Yeah.
So I think that those neighborhoods are harder to find in Brockville, or it's important to protect those kinds of neighborhoods. And I appreciate owning a property in a neighborhood that feels like that. So
that's good.
I will continue.
And I'm sure your tenants will be very happy.
That's the first thing that I said to them. I said, "You're going to love this neighborhood. You're going to love the neighbors. You're going to love the people around you."
Yeah.
Right. So
that's good.
It makes it easier.
Oh, that's
well
good.
managed, well looked after, and in a good neighborhood. That's
Good
hard
stuff.
to find. We all want that.
Of course.
We all want that.
Dean, you're very, very nice to take the time and come.
Thank you.
And share your story. I mean, as you can see, like I said, Jen came in and said, "Oh, is that Dean? I want to meet Dean. I've been dealing with him." So it's obviously, thank you for offering to come on, and we appreciate it very much.
Part of what I do in life is that, like, you go, when you learn something, it can be sometimes painful. And so if you can somehow take that painful experience and help somebody else with it, it makes it a little better.
Right.
So I want other landlords to know, stop struggling by yourself.
Right.
The best decision I could have ever made was when I started working with DORE.
Yeah.
And I want other landlords to know, it's a good option. Do it.
That's
Just
good.
do it.
Thank you. And that's kind of the purpose of the podcast, is really to try to grow everybody's pie. I mean, have everybody have access to a wider audience, taking the time to do this and then share it along. So thank you for being part of this journey.
Thank you too.
Thank you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the DORE Podcast. If you're an entrepreneur or investor focused on real estate in Ottawa, we want to hear from you. Apply to be a guest and check out our video content anytime on YouTube.